And welcome to the Hash Rugby Chat. And then there were four. Yes, we're supposed to be an hour-long show, but you know what? We kind of tend to overrun because John just keeps talking and talking and talking. So
singing.
And singing. Well, geez, no. Please not.
Brace yourselves, people. Brace yourselves.
Okay, so I apologise now, not just for all those that are offended, but go for it. Take it away, Maestro.
Well, which is the game we're going to start with first?
Oh, well, there's all sorts of things to talk about first.
But, okay, well, I'll save it for the
appropriate
suitable anthems.
Okay, then. Oh, dear. So, just to quick news roundup to let you know what's going on. The NRC, the final is going to be the Force versus Canberra Vikings, the top two teams from the regular season, so no big surprise there, so good luck to them. In the Minor 10 Cup, we've got... by the way, it'd be very surprised if the Force don't win that one. The Minor 10 Cup, the final is Tasman versus Wellington. And yes, Tasman haven't lost all season, so I'll give you a guess as to what's going to happen there. And then on Friday night...
Just as a comment, I haven't watched a lot of them, but I saw a bit... in fact, I've hardly seen anything of Tasman, to be fair, but I saw some of them playing their last round-robin game, and they play magnificent rugby.
Fabulous. Yeah, they were. And the last round-robin game, yes, because they played Auckland last weekend. And then John and I will both be at Bay of Plenty versus Hawke's Bay this Friday evening for the championship final.
How lucky are Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty? Sure.
To have you there, absolutely.
Both of us.
And also Simon Hughes, who's just joined us in the chat, he'll probably be there as well. And to me, the big issue here is hashtags. It's not about the game, but Mitre 10 the Twitter account seems to insist on using the acronym of BAY for Hawke's Bay. Now, Hawke's Bay lost the Bay of Plenty earlier in the season in Battle of the Bays, and they lost the right to be called The Bay. So surely their hashtag has to change now to HAW because they've lost that right. So, dearie me, you've got to say that... sorry?
What would we do if you weren't keeping us up to date on these hashtag Twitter wars?
Absolutely, the big issues.
Without your cutting-edge journalism.
Yes, I'm all over this. So, Mitre 10, obviously you'll be watching, whoever runs that Twitter account. You have two choices. It's either hash BOP VHAW or hash BAY Bay VHAW. But Hawke's Bay do not have the right to be called The Bay.
So remember this, people. Remember.
The Gallagher Premiership kicked off as well. And boy, did we have some... the top three in the Gallagher Premiership currently are Bristol, Worcester and London Irish. So if any of those three are up there come the end, I'll be amazed.
Everybody you expect, right?
Absolutely, everyone you expect to be up there. So fantastic start for London Irish getting that win. Yes, so that's the kind of momentum the promoted team needs if they're going to survive, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Pro 14, Top 14 are both happening as well. So keep an eye out for all of that. So there's only 5 domestic leagues happening at the moment. Can you believe that? Only 5.
Only 5 in the middle of the World Cup. Are the Cheetahs still top of the Pro 14?
Well, the Pro 14 is a dual conference system, but they are top of their conference. Yes.
Okay.
And they are still there. So they've so far they've played 3 games. Now they've all been at home, but they've had 3 tri-bonus point wins, so they've got the maximum amount of points they can have, and they start their road trips now. I think they play on the road now until after Christmas because of the weather in South Africa, which apparently gets a bit warm at this time of year.
Oh, yeah, January, February is blazing.
But I'll quickly check them out. Yeah, I don't think the Cheetahs play at home again until after Christmas, which would be, which is just kind of amazing how these schedules kind of work out. I mean, when you look at things like the Gallagher Premiership and Top 14, the most that you'll find a team play is like 2 away games on the trot. And then they come back and their fans get to see the team again. Whereas in competitions like Super Rugby, particularly for the South African teams in Pro 14, they can disappear for a couple of months. You can forget they even exist. Or they can definitely disappear for like 4 or 5 weeks.
Is this, this is obviously news.
Well, it's not news, but
English fans and
it's just crazy. So this is, how do you
we've
maintain?
only experienced this for 20-something years.
So the Cheetahs
suddenly working up to this.
Okay, the Cheetahs, right then. They're going to be playing Connacht Scarlets, Cardiff Ospreys, Zebre, and then the Kings. So admittedly, that last one is in South Africa.
For 5 weeks.
No, that Kings game is on the 26th of January. Their next home game is the 2nd of Feb.
There we go. This is what is. I mean, sorry, I'm going to stir the pot a little bit here for all our New Zealand viewers, but I was amazed a couple of seasons ago when there was this hue and cry in Super Rugby circles in New Zealand that there were South African fans South African teams that weren't playing New Zealand teams, right? And how it was unfair and not right. Meanwhile, over a 2-year period, the Lions, who made 3 finals in a row, beat every single New Zealand team at least once, right? But in the midst of all this hue and cry...
Really? They beat the Crusaders?
They beat the Crusaders. Remember, they won a semi-final against them.
Ah, okay, yep. That's right.
So over the space of 2 years, they beat every single team.
Yep.
Some of those games were away, like at the Chiefs in Hamilton. And while all that hue and cry was going on...
What's happening? Sorry, folks, we just had a technical issue. My computer went black for some reason. Decided to.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, yeah, no, my computer decided to suddenly go black, and anyway, but we're back. So, yeah.
Okay. Are we connected yet?
Yeah, we're okay. Yep, we're good.
Okay. So, guys, what I was saying was, in the midst of this, it's unfair, and how the South Africans don't play the New Zealand teams, and blah, 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 the South African team the Sharks went on a 4 or 5 week sojourn to New Zealand and Australia. And the Blues went to South Africa to play the Stormers and came home.
Yep.
They were gone for about 9 days, right? And everyone was going, and he said, this is so grossly unfair. And the Sharks have got like 4 or 5 weeks away. And the Blues are gone for 10 days. And I'm just like, jeez.
So the Cheetahs still play.
It is.
It is what it is. But the Cheetahs, though, will play, 27th of October, 3rd of November, 10th of November. It always makes sense. 1st of December. So hang on, suddenly there's a big gap between the 10th of November and the 1st of December because of European Champions Cup and Challenge Cup action. Yeah. They play on the 1st of December, then they play on the 5th of January. So that's over a month between games.
Yes. Well, I tell you what, it's going to require some discipline to keep those players because it's a very festive season in South Africa, right? Things shut down, barring stores and entertainment, and businesses and factories and building and everything shuts down, and it's a very festive time in South Africa. So to keep those players on their training regime and eating well over the family Christmas spreads, that's going to require some discipline.
Yes, it is. So we've apparently got an echo issue, so I'm just going to try and plug some headphones in to mitigate that. And hopefully we will be... that will sort out the echo issues. Sorry about that, folks. Sorry for the technical issues there. But yeah, so they then play that game, say 1st of December, then they play after 5th of January. The next game is on the 26th of January. How you keep a team, how you get any kind of momentum or any kind of fan base when you're not when you don't play at home for November, December, January for over 3 months, and you've got 4 or 5 week gaps between games. Good luck to the marketing department at the Cheetahs and the Kings. I mean, the Kings will have a similar schedule as well. So good luck to them with their social media and marketing efforts to try and keep the fans engaged, because that's a tough ask.
And I really do hope that they give these games that are held in the Southern Hemisphere summer, in Bloemfontein and in Port Elizabeth, that they make them night games. Of course, that's better for viewing in Europe, but also it's much cooler. It doesn't really help much February when we start Super Rugby again in Durban. It's still swelteringly hot in the evenings and very humid.
Rewind. Stop a second. What do you mean February? They're starting in January next year. For those of you on the podcast and not watching it, John is has just slapped himself in the face. He just can't believe that that this is kind of happening. So yes,
I shake my head anyway.
The reason for that is that what used to be the June test window is now going to be July. Hence, you move everything by 4 weeks. But there used to be 6 weeks worth of games after the June window, and hence you have to start 2 weeks earlier to fit in all the games before the July window. So it does mean we have one continuous block for Super Rugby, which is a good thing. But the compromise is that it starts a couple of weeks earlier in the last weekend of January. So,
well, whoever's playing, the Australians, of course, are out, but the Argentines are out, but the All Blacks and the Springboks, who are still in this competition, they're going to need some time off. They surely can't be expected to play before the end of February.
So normally I think it's a 12-week mandatory break. So where are we at now?
It finishes in the first weekend in November.
So yes, you get November, December, January off. So yes, you'd expect them to start, miss the first couple of rounds of Super Rugby.
Yeah.
But we'll get into those fun and games and all the Super Rugby predictions. It'll all be on DrivingMaul.com. With that as to and we'll take into account which players are missing and being rested when we come to those predictions. So don't forget to keep an eye out on there for Super Rugby predictions when we get around to that sort of stage. There are predictions on DrivingMaul.com for all the top competitions or top professional domestic competitions. So if you want to see the predictions for the Pro 14 or the Top 14, it's there on the DrivingMaul.com for your Super Brew to help you with your Super Brew predictions. One of the big things about Alex says, more summer rugby is good for more dry games, encouraging expansive rugby. Yeah, there's a compromise to be made between dry games and playing in 40 degrees heat, or whatever it is. When it gets over 30 degrees, playing in that kind of heat is just crazy.
Alex, we're not going to go down this rabbit hole, which I would go down, because then Paul gets all tense and we've got to wait till after the World Cup and then we'll have a whole program about it, whatever. But you are talking my language, in that there is no sense in the Northern Hemisphere playing their sport in the middle of the grotty winter with all that wet and rain and slush and cold and whatever, where so many of these games are played in the evening. And not only that, but club rugby practices and kids rugby practices, all of that is happening in foul weather, in unpleasant cold, when they could be held in much drier conditions in those lovely summer evenings where the sun goes down at 11 p.m. Right? So I'm with you, mate.
So Simon says that actually South African teams are going to be holding off until February the 1st for their first game. Simon, there's not much difference between the end of January and February the 1st. To be honest, it's still going to be hot.
Well, the two hottest months in South Africa are January and February. So if you think about it, your Northern Hemisphere, think about the equivalent months are July and August. So just like August is the hottest month in the Northern Hemisphere, February is the hottest month in South Africa.
Yeah. So you've got to put down. I mean, when I say the other teams play on the 31st, it's playing January. The Blues and the Brumbies play on the 31st of January. Or the Blues play the Chiefs and the Brumbies play the Reds. So they just start on that Friday, basically. So it's the last Friday. So it's the very last day of January. But it is still.
You're very upfront, mate, because it made much. It was far more impactful when you said they start in January, and then you didn't say it's the last day of January. But I appreciate your honesty.
It's still
just
January.
affected the impact of your story.
Yes, absolutely. Stacey, comments like that, are not helpful. To be honest with you, calling we don't approve of calling people scum at all. Moving on then, world rankings. New Zealand is still number 1. England have now moved up to number 2, with Wales down to number 3. South Africa have moved up to 4, Ireland down to 5, France up to 7, Japan down to 8. I mean, down to 8. Who'd have ever thought that Japan would ever move down to 8th? That's amazing. But the biggest loser this week has been Luxembourg, who have dropped from 57th to 62nd. So I just want to keep everyone up to the important movements in the world rankings there.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. So the important thing here is really that and whilst the world rankings are heavily impacted, you get double points during the Rugby World Cup. Still, the top 8 teams made the top 8, made the quarterfinals, which is good. And then we've got the top 4 teams are in the semi-finals, which is good.
So at the moment it's All Blacks,
Wales, England,
Wales, South
Africa. Yeah. And the top 4 there. We like to have a regular slot. I mean, we've gone away from the normal sort of format recently. Mickey Mouse moment of the week, but I think that it's quite clear that goes to the French, the French lock for his elbow. But Jaco Peyper very nearly takes it out for his photo with Welsh fans.
Look, can I just say that I think that's a storm in a teacup. I really do. You can stream and say it wasn't sensitive, whatever. It wasn't. Yeah, I just think there were a bunch of Welsh fans who saw him and wanted a photograph, and they said, "Oh, do us a favor, please just do this, right? Because we were in such strife, and you had no choice. Please just do this so we can post this for our mates and everything like that." And he went along with it, and he smiled and he laughed, and I think it was very funny. And if we can't joke about stuff, I think, then the boat is going down, because we need to be able to laugh at these things, right?
I agree. I think
if we can't laugh at the French, who can we laugh
at? Oh dear me. I agree. I think it's there is a sense of humour failure, and that people should. It's funny. Don't take it too seriously. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, how would the Welsh have felt if in 2011 we had the referee doing a tip tackle photo with French fans?" It's like, oh, well then, sense of humour failure again. But at least, the big difference in those two situations is the French player did it on purpose. It was deliberate. So, I think anything more than World Rugby is saying, please just say it was insensitive and sorry, and it should be all over. Move on.
Really, people. I think it's hilarious. I think good on the Welsh fans. The only thing that could have made it funnier would have been if they could have grabbed a French fan in a blue jersey and got him to stand there at the end of Peyper's elbow. That's the only thing that would have made it funnier, right? But really, it's a game. I know people get paid for it, whatever, but at its root, it's a game. He was stupid, mindless, Mickey Mouse moment of the week. We need to be able to laugh at this, right?
Yeah. So I mean that was the that's definitely the Mickey Mouse moment of the week, and I agree with you. I think that we shouldn't. Look, it's no big deal. It's just a photo. The fact that fans and referees can mix after games is good.
Excellent.
We want to have them accessible when able to talk to them. And the other weekend, when I was at Tauranga for a Bay of Plenty game against, I think it was the Manawa 2-1 from, but one of the assistant refs on the sideline got tackled by a player because the player missed the ball carrier and tackled the assistant ref instead by accident. So I had a quick chat with him afterwards, and he jokingly said to the citing commissioner, right, I want to cite that player. I want to see him banned for tackling me. It was all good fun and games, and the fact that you can talk to refs about that kind of stuff after the game, have a chat with them, I think is only a good thing.
I think it's brilliant. I think that if that had happened, if that photograph had been taken in the environment of football or soccer, there'd be like blood in the water. And the fact that we can have in rugby and laugh about it is one of the strengths of our game, right?
Yep.
The fact that fans can mingle and laugh and have perspective is what makes this game, one of the things that makes this game special.
Agreed. So let's kind of move on from all of that. So time for you to answer your chords.
Oh, which one are we starting with?
Well, chronological order. Let's go. England versus Australia.
Australians, all let us weep, for we are going home. The checker era is done and dusted. Oh, where to now for us? Can we get a Kiwi? Please, can we have one of yours? Because the last 4 years have been a dumpster fire.
Oh, a dumpster cause. I think it was. Oh dear, nearly. Anyway, so Dave Rennie apparently is going to be the front runner to replace Checker. So yes, we are looking at a Kiwi who's going to replace them. So Checker said he's not going to ask for renewal, and his contract runs to the end of the year. And he's not going to seek renewal. And then he also said that basically he doesn't talk to the CEO or the president or anyone at Australia, at Rugby Australia or Australia Rugby. I mean, geez, what?
Have you seen that Australian CEO, that woman, whatever her name is? Have you seen her?
Well, quite a few times. I mean, she's been around the flower and all sorts of other things. But yes, yeah.
She's a scary looking lady. Boy,
mate, look, she's. Yeah, I mean, she knows how to run a sporting organisation. She's done it with in rugby league, netball, I think it is, and now she's at Australia Rugby. But you got to say,
she's not doing a cracking job, is she? And it's not about being a woman. Please come down off the high horses. I'm just talking about they're just blundering from one debacle to another, right?
They are, yes, and it's, you got to wonder who actually is to kind of blame for that. I mean, a lot of the other, it's not all down to Raelene Castle.
No, it's the board.
The board is all sorts of things. So if you listen to Andrew Forrester, he's actually said, look, she's easy. She's got with the rest of them are an absolute disaster, which is why
Who's Forrester, by the way?
So Twiggy is the guy who's running Global Rugby and the Force. Global Rapid Rugby, and okay. Hence he's taken his competition off to Hong Kong to be sanctioned by them because it's less hassle for him. As soon as we come out with this, we have, Rugby Reg, who is from the Green and Gold Rugby podcast. One of the things that Ollie Brown, I think she handled the Flow saga very well, actually. One of the things that's come out, it's kind of like, hey, look, you're going to have Phil Kearns going, it's all a mess. It's like, Phil Kearns, you were head of professional rugby for a while at Rugby Australia during this happening. You're going to have other people at Fox Sport going out, oh, it's terrible. It's like, yes, you applied for the job and you're basically upset that you didn't get the job. You'll then get all the Sydney club rugby guys going, oh yes, the future is more effort into shoot shield. No, it's not, folks. God, it's just they're just pulling in so many different directions. It's not just I don't think it's all down to her personally, but there you go.
No. I'm not in any way saying that it's all down to her.
Yep.
I just made a facetious comment when you said he doesn't talk to her, and I said to her, well, she's pretty scary looking.
That's
why. Right? Yeah, but I don't know enough about what happens in Australian rugby to pass comment. I just know that they've had a number of issues over the last 4 years. It's easy to forget, but let's recall that there were all sorts of dramas that led up to the appointment of Checker. There were all sorts of issues around players and behavior on aeroplanes and treatment of female members of management and all sorts of issues around discipline. And I mean, there've been so much. There's the Folau saga, which, look, I'm not going to get into who's right, who's wrong, but really could have been handled so much differently and saved them so much money with a simple action of a simple tweet. We don't agree with him. A simple statement. We don't agree with him. That's his personal views. And we live in a country of freedom of speech. We don't agree with him. And within 2 weeks, it would have blown over. And now they're sitting, pouring money down the drain. And they've fought the wrong battles. They've focused on the wrong things. I just hope for their sake that they get some of the, let's use the New Zealand term mana, some of the former players who have mana, somebody like John Eales, right? Tim Horan.
John Eales is, I think he's actually on the Rugby Australia board currently. I think
maybe they should start listening to him.
Maybe. The problem also with the Folau thing is, again, that he repeated it. It's kind of like, look, you got to stop it. It's going to happen. Why? But anyway, that one, I think she dealt with it as a HR issue, But things like how they handled the force. Now that was a different ballgame entirely. That was a total mess. And I know that you've made comments before, and quite rightly, about the administration in South Africa. But the way they looked after the cheaters and the kings, I think, was actually very well done. That's one of the one of the few things they've done. They think they handled it very well. But yes, the Ollie Brown here. The board of the RU don't believe that rugby union exists outside of Sydney. There's an element of that.
There's an element of, but John Eales shouldn't be like that, because John Eales is a Queensland man, right? And always was. So that would be surprising. But whatever the issues are within Australian rugby, it's 15, 16, 17, whatever years since they last held the Bledisloe Cup. It's, their semi-final in 2015, their final in 2015 was an aberration.
Yep.
Right. There was a decision that sent them through from the quarterfinal that they should have lost, and there was tactical naivete from Argentina that caused them to lose that game. I personally believe that Argentina team would have given New Zealand a better run for the money in the final, but there was a lack of nous and tactical acumen there that cost them the game. I'm not saying that they would have beaten the All Blacks, but I think they would have given them a better run for the money. They shouldn't have been in the semi-final in 2011. They should have gone out in the quarterfinal to the Box, but for a diabolical refereeing performance, right? They were out in the quarterfinals in 2007. It's been a bleak since the 2003 final, which they deservedly were in, and they were playing really good rugby then under Eddie Jones. It has been a very poor 12 years. And if you take out that sort of 1 year miraculous performance to get to the final in 2015, it hasn't been a good run for quite some time for Australia. And where to now for them? Well, they've had a Kiwi coach before. Didn't turn out well.
Well,
they didn't.
Well. Let's say, Charlie it says that chat says, I'm concerned about Rennie taking over the Aussies only because Aussie play different. When Robbie Deans took over, he tried to take a New Zealand approach to coaching. Maybe, but he also had a much better record than either Mackenzie or Checker since him. So It might have been. It might have. It might have been a bit dysfunctional, and it didn't help him having people like Quade Cooper, Kurtley Beale, James O'Connor, and who was the other one? Digby Ioane. A whole bunch of players who had been schoolboy proteges and basically had smoke blown up their backsides from the age of about 17 or 16, and thought they could do no wrong, and thought they didn't have to, and thought they were above the law. Yeah, he had a real difficult hand dealt to him.
Remember that Cheika's winning record is only something like 52%, right? And 9 of those games, I think, of his wins are against Tier 2 nations. So if you take those games out and you talk about playing Tier 1 nations, that's everything up to Scotland, right? He has a losing record. You don't find that with Robbie Deans.
No.
So the nail in his coffin was losing a Lions tour, right? And there were rumblings before that, and that was the end of him. But
I think it was more the. Losing that Lions tour didn't help, but I think that there was an awful lot of backroom backstabbing. Of him.
I'd love for somebody to look up his win record against Tier 1 nations, and you'll find that he did far, far better, right, than people realize.
Yep.
And that's the problem when a team is on a slow decline over more than a decade, is it's like the frog in the boiling water. You don't realize how far back you're slipping.
Now, I'll be honest, I do have reservations of Dave Rennie taking over Australia. But my reservations are more around what happened at the Chiefs towards the end of his tenure, around Strippergate. There were abuse to parking attendants by the players, and the culture at the Chiefs clearly was not in a great place when he left. And I think that having somebody who can't manage a good culture with a bunch of those Australian players, I think that's it's a recipe for, maybe not a recipe for disaster, perhaps I'm being a tad harsh, but I do think that one of the key things they need is a person who can bring the right culture to that players and get them to understand that they aren't they aren't better than sliced bread, and that they need to put the work in and the effort in to earn that jersey, rather than it being their right.
I'm going to say something that's caused a bit of a stir, so I must be careful about quoting this person. But I spoke to a professional who worked in his profession with Australian sportsmen in rugby league, and then worked in rugby union, officially posted with teams carrying out his profession. I hope that's as vague as it needs to be to protect the confidentiality of what he said to me. But he said the difference between New Zealand professionals and Australian professionals was very marked. Australian professionals were professionals. You gave them what they needed to do, they went away and they did it. New Zealand professionals, rugby players, were like babies, right? Where he would get phone calls in the middle of the night, like he was their dad and they were a kid who didn't know what to do. Right, you didn't get any of that in dealing with Australian rugby league players. You didn't get. They pitched up for appointments on time. They came in their slots. They were ready. They did the background work. They realized this was a professional. The rest, the New Zealand players, were a bit like kids who still felt like they deserved to be spoon-fed. So, if you don't treat Australian sportsmen like grown-up professionals, I think you'll have a problem. They do not appreciate being babied, and that's going to be the key for David Rennie, is giving them responsibility and expecting professionalism and responsibility back from them in a way that honors the freedom of thought and expression that is so valued in Australia.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. But I'm looking at the clock and realise we've spent a long time.
I want to
talk about the game.
Why did they lose, Paul? You're the England fan.
We did
Even though you're wearing the red of the Welsh.
No, I'm wearing the red of the Lions. Actually, at the moment,
I know.
But
the red of the Lions is the red of the Welsh.
Quite similar red. They are both red. Yes. Anyway.
Yes. It's a red jersey, white shorts, blue socks.
Yep. The Michael Cheika was the only coach to win Super Rugby and Champions Cup. Interesting. As in the Rugby Championship. Yep.
Yeah, that's...
To be fair to him. So why did England beat Australia? Basically, Australia couldn't cope with the defence. It seems like an age ago since the game now. I'm trying to remember what happened. And then England managed to shut it down in the second half once they got their lead, kicking to the corners, pinning Australia back, and Australia just couldn't cope and just couldn't create anything amongst a smothering defence. But in that first half, we saw a couple of tries from Johnny May. Again, at least one of them was defence-led because of an interception by Henry Slade. But England got the next in front after. Actually, I think Australia came out actually the better of the two, didn't they, from memory? But Australia just couldn't create anything. And I think a lot of that comes down to what Cheika was saying, that he basically doesn't watch opposition tape and just says, right, we're going to play our way. And if you can stop us, you can. If you can't, then hey, we win. And I think Eddie Jones does look at opposition tape and knows how to stop him.
Fundamental. I've been trying to say this for years about Australia. Right? Australia do not have a tight five that is world class. Rugby starts in that five. The great first fives, fly halves, say that their success is based on the success of their tight fives. As brilliant as Dan Carter was, you'll hear him say, I played behind this Crusaders pack and that New Zealand pack, right? If you don't have an international class tight five, eventually you will be found out. No matter how smart your backs are, you will be found out. And Australia haven't had a world-class tight five since the early 2000s. So if you take the tight five they played and you think which of the starting five would make the New Zealand squad, the 31-man squad, I don't think any of them would, right? I don't think any of them would make the England squad. I don't think any of them would make the South African squad. And there is the problem. As smart as they are, as good players as Pocock and Hooper are, if you don't have a tight five, you are going to be found out. And that's what happened.
Yep. Moving on then. New Zealand versus Ireland. 46-14.
Hold on. Ireland, together going home, shoulder to shoulder, we still couldn't stop the All Blacks. Ireland, Ireland, where do we go now? Schmitty has left us. Oh woe, what now?
Right then. Well, we know
Even you've got the key change in there.
You've got the key change. Well, we know where they go now because they have Farrell, and we know where they're going to go. We're going to have, we're going to basically have Farrell in charge, who's, let's be honest, has helped run a very good defence at Lions and Ireland, but it appears that they're going to need a bit of a rebuild, and they've kind of run out of steam this year. If we look at the teams that have all made the Rugby World Cup, the semi-finals, they're all teams that have had decent pre-tournaments in the Six Nations for England and Wales, and the Rugby Championship and for New Zealand and South Africa. They maybe, I can't remember, actually South Africa even won it, didn't they? So, as Thelamus Lofi says, who needs looks with a beautiful voice like that, hey? Anyway.
Thank you, mate. I'm fortunate I got both, but I appreciate the recognition. That's right. I do have the face for radio. I do know that. Now, the thing is, and I actually, when I was thinking about it, I wanted to include a line going, we peaked 18 months too soon, because 18 months ago, They were a serious world threat. And this is, again, where you just got to give such credit to the All Blacks in their ability to refresh their side. So I'm not as familiar as Paul is with the Ireland squad, so I don't know if they've been really, really hard hit by injury, but they seem to lack the zip and they seem to lack the explosiveness that they had maybe 18 months ago. Recognizing, of course, that the All Blacks have boxed clever. And I think that there were moves that were displayed in that game that they've had in their bag of tricks. They've been working on them for a long time, and they refused to take them out, even if it meant not being able to rescue a test here and there. So, look, let's be fair to the Irish. They played the world's best team by some margin. The one team in the world that has the ability to dramatically change their game plan from week to week, to shift how they play from various points of attack from week to week, and seems to be able to do it almost seamlessly, right? So, yeah, let's be fair to them. They were playing the world's best, but it does appear like their greatest strength, the peak of their performance, was 18 months ago.
Yep. And you look at the frustration in someone like Sexton's face. You can see that he's frustrated with what's going on. It's not it's not clicking as he did. And I think in some ways, what we saw with New Zealand was that actually one of the best things that happened to them was losing in Perth, because straight after that, Ben Franks was gone, and was
Owen Franks.
Owen Franks was gone. That was it. He was out.
Ioane was.
Rieko Ioane gone, and basically said, right, if you're not in form, you're out. And they made hard decisions then, or the hard decisions that they needed to make were highlighted, and they made them quick. So that's
Sorry, I interrupted you.
So I think that those sort of things that perhaps Ireland hasn't made those decisions back into the Six Nations. Perhaps it didn't have the players to come in, or the depth, and they've not been helped. I mean, there are a couple of injuries, but on the whole, Dan Levy, the flanker, for example, would have definitely helped them if he'd been fit. But on the whole, they didn't have lots of injuries. But perhaps they just didn't. Perhaps they didn't keep things in the locker in the same way other teams have, and they just didn't make the hard decisions on some of the personnel they needed to back in the early part of this year. And I'd rather spend more time on looking forwards at the semi-finals, so we're trying to get through the last two.
Okay. So I just want to say one thing. The thing that will be overlooked, and I've seen it overlooked in post-match commentary, because of the brilliance of the back line and how they exploited space and how they attacked. Their counter-attacking was so brilliant. And this victory was based on the performance of the All Black forwards. And they completely diffused Ireland on multiple fronts. So when you see frustration on a fly half's face, like you saw with Sexton, the primary source of that is he's getting rubbish ball, right? And he's getting rubbish ball because the opposition forwards are messing up their ball. Whereas the All Black backline, when the ball came to them, it was front foot ball, it was clean, it was tidy, brilliant service from Aaron Smith. But Aaron Smith could give brilliant service because his forwards were just ruling the roost, right? And the All Black forwards showed that, again, we spoke about rugby starts in the tight five. For all their brilliance, the All Blacks don't ignore the fundamentals of the tight five, scrums, good line-out ball, fundamentals, tight five hitting the rucks, tremendous tackling. And then on top of that, they've got players that haven't been at their best in the last few years that are really starting to find form. Sam Cane, before he went off, was magnificent. I think he made 12 tackles by half-time, which is really extraordinary. And Kieran Reid was phenomenal. He really is. He's in a different role. He's playing down the center of the field, whereas a few years ago, he and Savia were wide on the left, and he played in that tram line. Now he's given a role in the center of the field, and he is exceptionally dominant in the contact, whether it's carrying and especially on defense. So, yeah, all told, just a complete performance starting with the forwards.
Yeah, and Reid moved there during the Lions tour. I think part of that was actually was a lot of the talk by the Lions coming to that tour, saying how they would dominate up front, and like, right, I'm the captain. I'm going to come to the middle. And I'm going to show you we're not going to be dominated. And yeah, he's stayed there since. Wales 20, France 19. Wow, a close one. That France.
Oh dear, what possessed our lock? He had a grey fog. It descended on him. He saw the red mist. He swung the elbow and he didn't miss. Oh dear, now we're going home. You better not be on the same plane. Oh, my word.
So, up until that point, France had the game under control. They had a really good first half, like we saw against Argentina. And I always thought they had half an hour, 40 minutes in them, and not having the full, what do you call it? Not 90 minutes. And France, Alex puts, France lost that game more than Wales won it. Yep, Wales kept themselves in the game, and that's one of the things they're good at doing. In all honesty, they don't win many games by big margins, but they do. What's the John Clark? I bet John can't sing the Japanese anthem. Well, oh God, we're going to find out. One of the, but
I can't sing it in a way that won't get me in big trouble. Won't be some misconstrued caricature that will get me in big trouble.
Where are we going now? I've just lost my train of thought. Wales do not win games by big margins. They keep themselves in it, and they did that again today. There are obviously some question marks around the strip, but with the angles that were given to the referees, we understand. We agreed with their call live, but realised there were angles afterwards that showed it went forward. But anyway, Wales, scraped through, and France lost.
Can I just say about the issue? Mm-hmm. Recognise the fact that strip was possible because the French scrum was monstered, and that allowed, I think it was the 9 for Wales, to be in an onside position in order to be able to get his hands there and affect the strip. If the French scrum had not been monstered, he wouldn't have been in that position. They wouldn't have been under that pressure, and that attempted strip could not have taken place. And the reason why they were monstered was because they were scrumming 7 against 8.
Yep.
Right. So two things to look at here. One is the lock left them a man down through his terrible decision. The second thing is there's a tactical mistake there. They chose not to put another player in the scrum.
And they not only did it then, but they did it earlier on their own put in the Welsh 22 about 5 minutes earlier, and again lost the ball. I mean, twice they did it. Ball
at their penalty, and that started driving them back down the field, right?
Yep.
So the issue here is it's their ball. They're going to clear it, right? Why do they not take one of their wings and add him to the scrum, right? They chose not to, even though it's their ball. They don't need wings on defense.
Yep.
So that it's both their player letting them down as well as a tactical decision that allowed them to be in that moment of pressure, right? So it's not okay for French fans to go, oh, it was a mistake by the ref, cost us the game. No, it did not. Your lock cost you the game because prior to that red card, France were completely in control. They weren't far away. They weren't disappearing in the distance yet on the scoreboard, but they had complete control of that game, right? And they were playing great rugby. And so, France reaped what that lock sowed.
But, and as I say, again, they could have won this game, but twice when they had their own put in, they didn't put an extra person in the scrum when they didn't need an extra person in the back line. Twice. Yes. And those two, and that real tactical naivety lost them this game.
Correct.
Wales's main problem is going to be that both their tries came from defensive efforts. They didn't make an attacking try in this game. And so the question mark is, do they have that in the locker to bring out against South Africa? Because let's be honest, you wouldn't have been keeping things quarter-final time. You don't hide stuff for later, especially when it's a 1-point game. So, that's got to be Wales's main concern.
Wales lacks the firepower of the other three teams that are in the semi-finals, right? So I know they're...
so we'll deal with that when we actually talk about the game. Looking forward to the semi-final.
Also, it's the shadow of what he used to be.
He is. Japan 3, South Africa 26. Do you have a song for us? No, good. This one came down to...
I would just get myself in trouble. This
one basically came down to, and this is one of the things you were talking about beforehand, was Japan running into a much more physical than they've come across so far in this tournament, and not getting the front football that they were used to, and quick ball that they were used to, and basically bashed themselves up for the first half. It looked close, but in reality, they just knackered themselves out, and then in the second half, that allowed South Africa to pull away and win it quite comfortably.
Now, here is where we are not well served by our commentators, because they kept on talking up the Japanese. They kept on saying what beautiful rugby they were playing. They say, oh, they're tiring out the South Africans. And I'm watching the game in the first half, and I'm seeing, and they're saying South Africans are slowing the game down. And I'm watching, and I'm seeing Japanese players sucking deep ones. I'm seeing in the first, Michael Leach looking, and that tough man. I'm seeing the Japanese team taking forever to walk up to their own lineout, and I'm starting to see the sort of body language of a team that's getting hammered, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the traditional. When I say traditional, I'm talking about going back 50, 60, 70 years. This is the traditional Springbok way. Albeit that back then they had very skillful backs, and I weep sometimes with especially the South African midfield. And Willie Leroux sometimes, I want to weep. But this is the traditional South African way, that you subdue and penetrate for the first 60 minutes, and then you unleash the backs. And what I saw was not a Japanese team rushing the South Africans around the field. I saw a Japanese team that was being hit behind the advantage line, or when they at least made the advantage line, was being driven back, number one. And then when South Africa had the ball, they were just surging across the advantage line, almost at will. And there was no answer. And you started seeing that effect. Not only, look, they got a rev up because they were inaccurate, the South Africans. I think they got a rocket given to them because they butchered at least 2 tries in that, just from poor handling, that were dead cert tries with proper handling, and another one that was highly probable. So you're looking at somewhere between, say, 12 and 21 points more that they should have been ahead. So they got a rocket at half time. But besides the accuracy that lifted a level, you started seeing, from the Springboks, you started seeing the effect of that physical onslaught on the Japanese players. And shortly after half time, you saw their first 5 being replaced, and he looked finished, right? You saw their very good performing number one, Lucet Prop, come off much earlier than we've seen in the rest of the tournament, and he looked broken. And it wasn't much, 20 minutes later, that his replacement, the very good prop with sort of highlighted hair, highlighted beard, I forget his name, he was off with broken up ribs, and he was smashed up. And the number one had to come back on again to take his place. And I don't think he gave much thanks to his colleague. He did no favors for the starting number one. And the Boks just mangled them physically, right? And as wonderful as the Japanese rugby is, and it is fantastic, the difference between them and, let's say, the All Blacks is that the All Blacks have the athletes, especially in the tight 5. So the next step for Japan rugby is not style of rugby. Japan needs to find and develop the athletes to be able to take them now to the next level, to actually compete with sides that are as physically big and strong and athletic as South Africa.
And the way that they might find those athletes is through the Sunwolves. And you might say to me, but Paul, the Sunwolves have been canned, haven't they? Well, apparently they have, they have, yeah, definitely. But Sanzar are meeting in Tokyo this Friday to have a chat. And apparently on the agenda is Japan entering the Rugby Championship. But one of the prerequisites, or one of the requirements of that, will be them having a Super Rugby side, or basically resurrecting and saving the Sunwolves. So
I hope they do it.
Yep, same here. I hope I put a tweet out saying, look, that basically this is the reason why the Super Rugby needs to stay in Japan, and that was, I can't read the number. Japan, one of the games got a bigger audience than the FIFA Rugby World Cup final in Japan. It got a massive. So when you got that kind of there is the ability, or there is an audience there.
Bigger than the French, France. I even forget who they played. The final in Russia.
So hang on, I'm just bringing up the tweet now, so I'll have the facts for you in a second. But the TV audiences for the Japan games have been immense. Something like 45 million or something people were watching the Japan versus Ireland game. Now, that's 10 times the size of New Zealand, folks. That's everybody in New Zealand watching a game 10 times. That's a lot of people.
The entire population of New Zealand, No. Times 10.
Times 10, yes.
Not the watching population. No. The entire population of New Zealand times 10, right? Wow. I mean, that'll get the attention of Sanzar, because we know how motivated they are, right? So they'll be thinking, if we can get that kind of support for the Sunwolves in the international competition, how much advertising revenue can we generate, right? So, yeah, I hope so. I really do hope so.
So yes, my computer is going to come up, but that I think is what basically has shown the mind of Sanzar. Apparently, also the board has changed since the last time, and partly whilst travel was one of the reasons, another reason that South Africa were not happy with Japan were that Japan voted against them for the Rugby World Cup hosting in 2023 and voted for France instead, but also they voted against South Africans getting various seats or positions at Rugby on 2 other occasions as well, apparently. Now, I don't know which positions they were or which people they were, but I do know that was being reported. So, if the board has changed, if those people who have had their noses put out of joint have moved on, then clearly that's got to be clearly it becomes now a possibility that the Sunwolves could be reinstated. So trying to find that tweet, get you the exact number.
Don't worry about it.
No, I've got it here. Here we go. So Japan's victory over Scotland was watched by a peak audience of 54.8 million.
Goodness me.
That pipped the 2002 FIFA World Cup audience in Japan of 54.1 million.
That's almost the entire population of South Africa, which is 55 million.
There you go.
So, well, no wonder that's got their attention. No wonder.
So maybe the Sunwolves will be saved. We should get some sort of willing on Friday. And Friday we're having those. They'll be talking about that kind of stuff. So let's hope they make the right decision.
Okay, so nail your colours to the mast, yeah.
So coming up, we have England versus New Zealand. Now, if you want to have the full reasoning behind this, DrivingMaul.com has got my predictions for this. I
take no responsibility.
Don't know. Now, you have to be a supporter of Driving Maul, and you be a supporter for $1 a month. It just doesn't cost much to view it up until Friday morning. Friday morning, I'll unlock it and it will be public. But so England versus New Zealand. I've gone for New Zealand. In all honesty, it's hard not to. Let's be honest. But it is going to be interesting to see the kamikaze twins, as he's calling them, in Underhill and Curry. There's two very young but guys up against Surveyor and Sam Kane. Two, I mean, still young guys, but two guys with a lot more experience than they have. So that's going to be a really interesting battle. And look, in players like Johnny May and Elliot Daly, they've got the pace to cause the All Blacks trouble. But look, this All Blacks team has just been, ever since the Tonga game, they look like, actually maybe even Venezuela Cup 2, they really look like everything before that was building towards this. And you've seen that's all come together. And poor performances we've seen in previous earlier in the year, I can see that from there. Mr. BBI, thank you very, very much for the $20 super chat. Very much appreciated. And let's read out what you have to say.
Thank you, Paul.
The All Blacks by 11, nothing personal, but I hope South Africa don't win. Bring back the Sunwolves and Japan in the championship. So I hope internal prep wasn't a factor in Seb Vamahina's retirement. He's way too young to be out. Actually, I've heard he's retired. Let's hope it's one of these things that goes away. Let's all of the issues die down. Let things blow over, and then make himself available again. Right.
Is he retired completely from rugby, or is he retired from international rugby?
From international rugby.
Okay. I think, can I be honest with you? I think it's wise, right? It doesn't remove him from comment, but it moves him from at least part of the calls, takes him out of that contention. He plays very well for his club, performs if he shows on the field for the rest of the season, and people now start calling to return. Different story, right? And then he'll come back on the wave of positive public opinion. I think it's probably a wise decision on his part. Himself from at least as much as he can without completely giving up his livelihood.
Yep. I thought get himself out of the limelight. To be honest, no more international rugby until sort of March next year anyway, for the next Six Nations. So he could easily retire for 3 months. And then actually, you know what? Yep, looking good. Has done his penance and comes back to the Six Nations.
I think again, if I was him, I wouldn't consider coming back unless there was a groundswell of opinion that France needs him and he'd be brought back with a contrite attitude, of course, and changed behaviour. But you want to come back to the fold with the pundits, with public opinion, and say, yeah, we want, right? You don't want coming criticism, people say, what is this man doing here?
True. Yep, true.
Okay, I ask you, the All Blacks, comfortably. It may not look comfortable on the scoreboard, but in actual control of the game, I expect by the last 25 minutes, the All Blacks to be well in control of the game. Remember, the All Blacks, I think it's something ridiculous, like 180 games they've played. They are leading at half-time. Doesn't matter how big their lead is. If they have 1 point, if they are leading at half-time, their win is like 19% over the last 180 games. Right? So going back sort of more than 10 years. If you want to beat them, be up at home.
Yep. But saying, and then we have that famous thing that the always come back and destroy you after 60 minutes. Not this year actually, or this. But yeah.
Just pointed that out a few times, Paul. How that cycle they've said better than they used to. But again, same story. If you are not ahead at half time, they are 3 times. Just think about that. It's 3 times out of 100. Will you win, right? Across home and away. So that's the thing. They need to be ahead. My concern is I don't know if they can have pins to be able to lead by half. Everybody's on the same tide. they have the creativity to build the lead back there. The All Blacks, I see them concede penalties for Farrell to kick and kick from key positions. So I agree with you. The All Black to win now.
Yep. Then Wales versus Africa. Now there's things to point to talk here. Josh and Hamsh.
That's a loss.
He's been having a very good and placed him. Now he's in play number 8, but he's placed 7 or 8. They replaced him with Owen Lane. The Cardiff winger comes. Now there is the Jonathan Davis put of the France Test match late notes are in. Having Parks playing with, so their centre stocks are stretched, whereas all of their other currently. That's why they've gone down this route. So.
Okay.
So yes, that's to me, Jonathan Davis. If he's not playing, that's a loss for Wales. And as we mentioned during when we're looking back, all their tries came from defence, not from attack. They did all their attacking. Jonathan Davis is those. Wales haven't done anything in this process. So basically, it's that big favourites coming to this one.
Yeah. Another team plays attractive rugby. It must be so for late like Gerald Davies, John Edwards, JPR Williams, Edwards. It'd be for them to see the forces of attacking in that back line behind a good pack of forwards. They don't score 5s and 7s that create themselves on it. Africa is far than that French back, right? There are few any of the French forwards that would start for South Africa. France was comfortably in control of that game before the red card. I don't see Wales winning. See, from a beauty of the gameplay, I don't think either of them are team is an advert. As much as I'm wearing emblem, I don't see either of them would add which is sad for me. Because we talked about the Welsh backline. I'd love to see Africans play with brain, courage, and ball. But the Springboks have devastating wins and ability to set an opportunity if they're provided with the correct ball. I've seen Pimpy's ring with I think 14 matches or 8 matches and almost try to get a match. And remember, in Nations, the Rugby Championship, they're doing against Australia and New Zealand. It's not all run up secondary.
Hang on, you did say they're playing Australia.
Yes. It's built up issues against New Zealand and Australia on a regular basis.
Yes.
It's what I'm saying.
Australia are a team. They're not a good team.
The point in this last game were 2 tries, and he would have had it if Armour had the police try and actually just made a nice in for 3 in them.
And that's what South Africa got the back 3. They've got a good 10. They have 2 midfielders, can't pass the ball, but
they ball in the midfield.
They're both great defence. Both really what they do, but there are a bunch of stuff don't do. It's basically pass the ball.
I so love to see Staines at 12. I think, if you want to beat the All Blacks, they need to attack. And I would see him start at 12. Have the ability to get a full pass, right, both ways. And since Dark will set, especially in this game, and I expect the back forward slowly, long to overwhelm the Welsh and South to win.
Now, the Welsh side has beaten South Africa in the last 5 encounters, I think it is, they've had, or something like that. So they've won their last competitive games. The only games they've lost recently have been World Cup warm-ups where they've been rotating things before the World Cup. This team